Look at this hefty piece of machinery. Mazzer, known for making commercial espresso grinders, through and through Italian, are now dipping their little toes into the home market, making this single dose grinder. But let's see if it can translate from commercial to home. This is the Mazzer Philos. It's the 64mm flat burr grinder that grinds for both espresso and filter, which is always handy. Most of the grinders that say they can do that can't. So we'll see whether they can finally break that mold. I'm excited to get into it. We'll even ask Sam, our cameraman, what he thinks of it. No one cares, Sam. Now visually, if you can't tell, I'm a big fan of this. I think it's pretty sexy. It's kind of got some modern design elements to it, but it also dives into a little bit of like, I don't know, would you say Art Deco? Kind of reminds me of those old steam trains with like the big steam pipes. You could imagine some steam rolling out. Spoiler alert, I have played with this and it's pretty bloody good. But we'll get into my thoughts about what I like, what I don't, and we can see all the chapters are down below. So if you're bored with me, you can skip through, but why would you be? Watch the whole thing. It's gonna be entertaining. Talking about grinders. What's not exciting about that? The cameraman's asleep. Hey, wake up. Okay, it doesn't bode well for you if he's already asleep, but I promise you'll learn a lot from this video. Quick run through of the machine. We've got our dosing funnel here at the top. It's also got this ingenious little stopper, like a little chute stopper. It helps you start hot when you're trying to grind and also can stop popcorning, which is really helpful. It's got a 58mm dosing cup at the bottom with some of the strongest magnets I think I've seen on one of these. It's locked in, you have to get it out. Got this giant grind adjustment at the back here, stepped and stepless, whatever you want. Now there's been a bit of contention about this online, so we'll get into that later. Some people aren't happy with the grind adjustments being at the back. How could you, Mazzer? Sam, what do you think of the grind adjustments at the back? You know nothing about coffee, be quiet. This whole front plate with the big old logo just pops off, and then you can get into your burrs in there. There's this like nerdy little, what's it called? I forget what it's called. It removes coffee ground so there's zero retention in the grinder there. We'll get into the burrs later. Turns on the side here and even has this little clicker to get coffee grounds out, claiming for zero retention. Spoiler alert, no grinders is zero retention. You can be very little retention, but most of them have some, but this has very little, so it's good. And it's hefty, feels expensive, feels nice. It's like 12.5 kilos. So without further ado, let's dive in. So this grinder is tapping into single dosing, which is the biggest thing in coffee right now. So much so that if you tell a coffee nerd that you have a hopper, they will berate you and bully you endlessly. Chill out. It's a hopper. Some people just want to chuck their grinder in and make their coffee. But single dose is great for those who are wanting to try multiple different coffees, who want to keep their coffee fresher because you can keep it in an airlocked bag, so it means your coffee doesn't oxidize as it sits in a hopper, and it's a lot easier for experimentation. I'm just gonna weigh out some beans, and if you haven't seen this, sub-minimal subscale, the little cup, and it's got the scale on the side of the cup there. Now this grinder, I've started cold with it, which is basically when you dump the coffee in without the grinder going, and then turn it on. And it's been fine, no clogging, it hasn't hurt at all, but you can start hot. One of the great things is it has this little stopper on the chute, so you can close it, pour your beans in, and they just sit there, and then you can do a hot start, which is when the motor is running, and then you just open the chute. And if you want to stop popcorning, close the chute again, or put the lid on, but you know, you can just do the chute, and that'll stop coffee popping out the top. Then you got your grounds, and there's this little flicker to get rid of any retention, all the coffee in there, away you go. So this is where cool design, great machining from a company that does a lot of commercial machines comes into play. This is a game changer. This is a lifesaver. Here, click that off, the whole front comes out. You've just got a couple wing nuts that you unscrew, and this whole front section can come off. So even though people have issue with it being back here, it's actually for a really smart reason. And let me tell you what, with my grinders that I have that are hard to clean, I just don't do it as much as I should because I'm lazy. Whereas with this, it just pops off and you're there. That's it. You can get straight into cleaning. It's coming with a brush, and you can see how little retention there is anyway. You can clean that way more regularly than you might before. You have the other side of the burr in here, and then this can just slide back on, no problem. Let's move on to the next section. Let's talk about what's inside here. Now we get to this auger, and so what this does is, you'll see this big part here, spinning at the front. As you feed in the beans for the single dose, it's going to slowly feed them into the burrs. And this means that the grinder grinds a little slower than other grinders, but it gives you a better grind quality because it's slowly feeding the beans in. It's not all at once. It means that the burrs can grind more uniformly and you're going to get less fines and less particle distribution in that way. And also, I think for at home, I'm not in a rush when I'm single dosing. I don't know if an extra 4 or 5 seconds of grind time is a big deal breaker, but just so you know, it is a little slower if that's an issue for you. Also, if you're a coffee nerd, you've probably got a bit of time on your hands, you f***ing loser. Hey. There's nothing I've said to you that I haven't said to myself 7 inches from a mirror. And the proof is in the pudding. These grounds are so fluffy. They look unbelievable. All right, so the burrs. It feels very 2024 that when you're buying a grinder, you can pick different burrs there. Obviously, aftermarket burrs have been a big thing, but now we're getting coffee companies that are selling all the different ranges when you order your machine that you can pick. So this one has the 2 options. It's got what I have in here, which is the 200D, and then we've got the 189D as well. So the difference between these, 189D is more of a traditional style of espresso. There's not gonna be huge amount of particle difference, like in the particle size. It's still going to be pretty uniform, but this one's going to give you like more fines and it's going to give you more body, more texture in your espresso. So if you're using like medium to dark roast and you want that kind of syrupy, rich feel of espresso, then 189D is the way to go. The 200D that I have in there at the moment, this is for that more modern style of espresso, maybe longer extractions, lighter roast coffee, great for filter. And this is going to give you a lot more clarity and cleanliness. So you're really going to taste like the origin of the beans and those flavors that you're meant to. The trade-off is you might not get as much body, as much texture when you're making your coffee, but I think the modern world and coffee nerds are kind of leading to this more side of clarity as opposed to the traditional espresso. Me, I'm kind of in the middle. I still love a classic syrupy espresso, so I've been using both and both work great. You can definitely tell the difference. There's definitely a big taste difference. Now these 64mm burrs in here, the 200Ds, they feel kind of similar to the SSP burrs. They've got those long, sharp teeth that are going to grind really uniformly, whereas then on this more classic one, you can see you have the different patterns and the different shapes that are kind of going to bring the coffee beans into the burr and then smash it on those outside sharp lines there. But yeah, if you're going to pick one of these burrs, I think, you know, classic espresso for the 189D, more of a modern style with the 200D, you can't really go wrong. Let's pop this back on and we're going to take a little trip all the way back here to the back of the grinder where you'll find the grind adjustments. I will admit, when I first saw this, I thought it was a little bit odd, but I think more and more modern grinders need to get the grind adjustments away from the burrs and the cleaning because it just makes it such an issue when these two things are linked. Having it all the way back here, it's separate. You're not knocking your grinder. There are other grinders that I've got that when you dose your beans, you might knock the grind and it moves as you're grinding and it's really easy to adjust. Back here, when you're single dosing, you're not touching that part of the grind size. So it stays consistent and less coffee grounds get stuck in there, kind of keeps it cleaner. So for all those reasons, it makes sense. In terms of movement, the numbers are giant. You can clearly see all the adjustments that you're making. That's how easy it moves. For me, I haven't found it an issue at all, but I can sympathize that maybe some people's kitchens, it's in the back against the wall in a corner, and maybe, I mean, even then, I still just feel like I can do that. I don't know, but I sympathize that maybe some people would struggle, or if it was on a higher bench place and you couldn't see. There's probably some issues, but for me, it's been completely fine. Also really satisfying clicks. Feels good. Now the grinder is stepped, meaning that it's those little clicks is changing grind sizes. I thought that I was going to have issue with that. It can be made stepless and I was going to do that, but the adjustments between each step is 6 microns. So for me, that's enough of a small variance that I don't mind having it stepped. I'm never needing more space than that when I'm making my grind adjustments, but it is easy to make it stepless. You just take off the back here. Everything is machined really well, like that just flies off. Here at the back, you just take out the 3 screws and there are 3 little spring bits here. You take them out, put the screws back in, close it up, and then it is stepless again. I can't be bothered doing that because I'm fine with it stepped. Really easy to do. Now let's talk about retention. We're getting to the cool part. We'll actually start making some coffee, which is why we're all here, really. I will also say on this thing, the burr alignment straight out of the factory is unbelievable, meaning like, you know, how aligned the burrs are. And so that helps with grind uniformity. This is one of the best kind of machined grinders out there. So coming straight out of the factory without you having to do anything, it's really, really good. But we'll talk retention. So we pop in the coffee, start the grinder hot, pull the chute. And you can see here, As I said, it can take a little bit more time. This little flicker is great. It only needs like 2 and you've pretty much got all of it. As I mentioned before, as every espresso machine needs magnets. Oh, it's locked in. Look at that magnet. That is locked in. So another thing that can happen here, if you're, no grinder, as I said before, is really gonna be 0 retention. It's kind of impossible. There's always gonna be something in there. This is very, very low within that kind of 0.1 gram of retention. For the real coffee nerds, they even added this little plug thing that you just ram up the chute and then you just kind of wiggle it back and forward. And that little part between the burrs and the chute where coffee could get stuck, this helps get that. But look, it's not very much, that's what it is. I personally would only ever use this if I was changing the coffee that I was using, or if I'm like switching from espresso to filter and I wanted to make sure I didn't have any like filter espresso grinds in my filter. But if I'm just between shots, I'm not worrying about that. Oh, and I also saw someone commenting online. There was a few nasty comments about this grinder online, and then when I got it, I'm like, what are these people talking about? Someone was complaining. They were like, the static inside the dosing cup has some of my coffee sticking to it. And I was like, wow, that is a real problem. And then I thought, fix the problem. It's off the side of the cup now. That was hard. Some people. But these grounds are beautiful, super fluffy. So very low retention. And they've even gone to the effort of having a little plug thing up there to help you. Really, this little flicker is super easy to use and does a really good job. But now we've ground some coffee, let's make an espresso. We're around this side now. So 58 millimeter dosing cup, kind of fits on the inside so that you're not going to have any spill. Flip it around. We'll give it a little WDT. All right, so we went 19 grams in, aiming for kind of a 2-to-1 ratio on that. Oh, too fast. We got that in 20 seconds. So on this machine, I'd probably go, 2 clicks finer on that. But as always, never just throw out your espresso, even when you do a bad one. Taste it, see what's happening. Yeah, still pretty good. It's a little twangy. Ooh, is this a fresh roast as well? When was this roasted? Oh yeah, it was roasted like 5 days ago. So workflow of this, scale, 19 grams, chute shut, beans on top so they can just sit there in that chamber. Hot start. Again, just a little lever there. Flippity whip. Give it a little WDT for the fans. Let's see how we go here. Again, we're aiming for 38 grams in maybe like 25, 28 seconds. You can tell that the coffee's fresh, it's just a bit too gassy. Again, probably a little fast, a lot better. That was 23 seconds. And so I think I added 2 extra seconds of extraction time by 2 adjustments. So you can see that they're small adjustments. So you'd still probably want to go 1 or 2 finer on that to get it right. But it kind of proves that those are really fine adjustments when you're dialing in your coffee. Unless you're really finicky with the step list, the step is fine. Just having that coffee, I just changed the extraction time by like 2-3 seconds. It always baffles me when like these tiny little adjustments that we make can so drastically change the flavor of our coffee. Like it went from chocolate, a little dry with like a weird acidity, to now like balanced red apple, chocolate, caramelly, like sweet. Like it tastes sweeter than it did before. It's wild that just these tiny little adjustments. Now let's switch to filter and see how that comes out. From experience, I think I needed to get to like, 50, 60 range. So let's try 55-ish, give that a whirl. Just do a test here. Okay, so you know how I made fun of the person before saying that some of the ground's stuck to the side? A bit of the chaff is sticking to the side in there with filter coffee. I mean, this is pretty, did I nail this? That's pretty good. I reckon I could go maybe like 5 stops finer. Oh, and that's the kettle boiling, if you're wondering what that sound is. So I'm gonna go with 16 grams of this beautiful coffee here. We've got a Guatemalan Cultura washed Santa Isabel. So this is really nice caramel notes, bit of red plum, quite floral, really clean, beautiful coffee. So I think it's a good one to test out on those two sides from the espresso to filter. So let's pop it in. Again, we'll start hot. Engine on, shoot. Nice little bloom there. It's really floral on the nose. Nice tea-like tannin, beautiful brightness, sweetness. There's like a brown sugar note to it, which is really nice, but just that like resounding kind of sweetness that comes through. Sam, cameraman, do you want to try it? Let us know what you think of the Market Lane.
I don't have much of a taste bud for filter coffee.
Well, let's see.
But it's smooth.
Yeah. It's
Normally
nice,
it's really
juicy.
It's not.
Yeah.
So it can do both.
Shut up, cameraman. No, I mean, that was very insightful there. For a man who doesn't drink filtered coffee, you know, that was well said. It's not acidic, but it like hits your taste buds in a way that makes you like salivate a bit, and it kind of like to get your taste buds going. One of the better grinders, if not best. I don't want to be like definitive. You know, in terms of both filter and espresso, that's pretty bloody banging. And I guess it makes sense. Big commercial side to these guys, bring it to a home market. So really good on both. Now, overall, pretty great experience. It really just comes down to what you want. If you don't like the size of it and the design, it is a bulky grinder. It is big. You kind of need it next to a big machine. It would kind of be ridiculous next to a little Bambino or something like that. If you have issues with the placement of it because of the grind adjustments being at the back, that could be a deal breaker. Those things don't seem to matter for me where I am. I've been completely fine with it. I love the little clicker here that releases those grounds. I think that's one of the easiest ones to use that I've kind of played with. I love that I can remove this without changing the grind adjustments, and those burrs are so much easier to clean. And I think the coffee tastes fantastic. I think, you know, you might have a complaint if you were like, you don't like the burrs, they're not gonna be the taste of coffee, but you can pick which burr that you want, whether you want that classic Italian espresso style or whether you want that more new wave. They kind of have something for both of you there. I think this grinder is great for the person that wants to do both, that has enough room and enough money to spend on it. It's like 1,600 AUD, or double check, 1,659 AUD. So it's not cheap, but I think it's pretty cheap for how good it is. I know it's expensive and not everyone can always just dish out that kind of money, but for what it does, I think it's really good. It is missing, there are a few more modern things like the RPM adjustments that this machine doesn't have. I think there were lots of machines in COVID that got built quickly, came out quickly. These guys are old school. They've been designing this for years, and it's kind of like a workhorse that feels like it's gonna last you a really long time and it's built really well. I don't really mess around with RPM stuff. If you want that, there are other grinders that do it. Get that. If you just want something that's consistent, that produces really high quality espresso and filter, this is awesome. Really impressed with this by Mazzer. I've used all their grinders in commercial settings for years and years. So to have this now in a home setting, it's pretty beautiful. But that's my rundown of the Mazzer Philos. Great machine. I spoke to the team over there. They sent me this one. They were super lovely. They helped me out with everything. Super informative, and it feels like a lot of time and effort went into designing this, and I think it really shows, and it's a really well built piece of machinery. If you want to see any more reviews, let us know. Check out some of the old videos. They're over there. Who knows? Please subscribe, share it with your friends. Tell everyone. I'm so lonely. I'm so lonely. Coffee up. Sam's like, I'm here. No one cares, Sam. All right, peace out.